Welcome to Reframe Your Mindset for Success. With me today is Scott Leiper. How you doing, Scott?
I'm really good, Paul. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant to have you on. And what have you been up to this week, Scott?
Oh, it's a busy one. I'm currently almost at the end of my COVID isolation period, so that's kept me occupied. So the answer to your question should really be Netflix. But yeah, I've been actually pretty busy facilitating a lot of different programs. I've been doing late night sessions to Australia this week, which has been fab. Um,
Brilliant.
and I've been working with an old client revisited that's came back around. A wonderful charity based in Glasgow called Cornerstone Foundation. So that's been great because I've been able to use a lot of my creative energy in a different way for a client I've worked with for a number of years as well. So yeah, I've been a bit busy just recovering and also keeping business going while I've been recovering. So yeah,
Brilliant.
it's been an interesting week.
And as we just said, I've got COVID too, so I can
Yeah, COVID
empathise
brothers.
and sympathise both of us at the
Yeah,
same time.
you're
What
just
are your
getting on the
chances?
train and I'm getting off it, I think.
That's it. That's it. Well, hopefully you get better soon.
Yeah.
As you know, at the start of the podcast, what I do is I get you to explain your story in as many words as you want. So that's
Cool.
the opening gambit. So over to you.
Yeah, cool. I was thinking about this question actually about how far back you go in a story to tell it. So I'm probably just going to tell it through highlights of creativity because that's the kind of space that I work in. So um, I think the first time I noticed creativity in my story and my experience was actually through my grandfather. So my grandfather was a baker. He had his own bakery business based in Douglas and Lanarkshire. And obviously, when I was a young lad, I used to go to my grandparents every second weekend. And when I went to my grandpa's, he used to take us down the beach, quite close to where we live at the moment, actually. And he used to always, he's a bit of a hoarder like my dad is, actually, just gathering stuff that looks like rubbish and wreck and then bring it back and build something out of it. And he used to make the most amazing, crazy golf courses out of things he found on the beach, like old drain pipes and plastic bleach bottles and all these different things and build all this really cool stuff in his garden. Um, but when you were into my grandparents' house as well, there just seemed to be a real space of imagination in there. There was because he was a great baker, he used to make the most stunning flamingo pink meringues in his own lemonade that was kind of canary yellow colour. God knows what he was putting in it to make it that colour. It probably was canaries that were in it. But I always have really salient memories of those times as a kid. And I think the thing that I've only really noticed in later years is the thing that made them special was the love that he poured into each of those things that he was doing. Because as a baker, he's a craftsman and he's making things by hand. And he's building things with his own hands. And I think that always appealed to me. And I think that's the things that I got most from my early years in education was I was always far better at things that were crafting and things that were building and things that were really creative. I wasn't particularly academic at school. My brother's probably the opposite of me. He was incredibly academic at school and I wasn't. So I didn't really have the grades to go down a university route, just simply because I wasn't, a great student. I think my best schoolwork was probably the artwork on my school jotters rather than the grades of anything else I did. So I kind of grew up in retail, Paul. Um,
Yeah.
I started my work career selling sports shoes. I really love sport as you do as well. I'm a big football fan, and I thought, well, if I can't go down the route of being a PE teacher or something, I'll sell sportswear for a living, and it might naturally find my way into sports in that way. And I noticed quite quickly that actually what I actually really enjoyed once I started doing that was not necessarily the sports side of things at all. It was actually the ability to grow people and to support, people that work with me as well. And I went very quickly from joining that in pretty much a sales role to, retail management and regional management. And over the period of, a few years really, when I was kind of 19, 20, I was looking after small concessions and then I was starting to look after single units, and then eventually that translated into doing training for a job. I ended up taking on a regional training role at the company I was working with when I was 23, which was really young. But I then suddenly rediscovered my love and my interest in the kind of academic literacy side of what I was actually doing as well, because everything I'd done had been really quite kind of creative in a sense that I was making my own destiny with it, but not really studying the kind of research and the evidence and the science behind everything I was doing. So I started doing, some CIPD studies at that time, and it was the best decision I made at that age of my career, because I had all this kind of gut instinct, emotional response and reaction and imagination, but I didn't really have anything underpinning it by way of knowledge. So I kind of really get lost in the studies of all of that, and then I spent the next X number of years basically working in kind of retail environments a bit like that, and then eventually I ended up working for the cooperative group, and I joined them because I basically felt that they had so many different businesses within the one business. So I was able to work in travel, pharmacy, funerals, retail, wholesale, a whole load of different areas. And I kind of decided at that point I wanted to do different things every day and work with different companies every day. And I think I probably decided in year one that I wanted to be self-employed, but I would have to work towards how I would do that. And I think my story really started was my boss at the time said to me, I've got his tickets to go and see a guy up in Edinburgh next week. And I went, all right, what is it? And she said, it's a guy called Richard Oliver. He's doing a Julius Caesar Shakespeare play. And I was like, Monday morning in Edinburgh seeing Shakespeare doesn't sound like somebody who grew up in retail side of fun. But I went, I'll go along, see what it's like. And honestly, Paul, it changed my whole outlook on business and on learning. The guy stood up at the front of the room and he said, my name is Richard Olivier. You might recognise me because my father Lawrence was very famous in the theatre world. And I was like, oh wow, who he is. And he did this Olivier mythodrama in front of the audience and brought all the different acts to life. And he unpicked all the characters, talking about emotional intelligence, political intelligence, asking the audience to get involved in it. And I was like lightning bulbs flashing in my head about how you could actually make learning really different by layering it with different things. And that day I went home and wrote my business plan for my business. Brilliant. I went off and did it. And literally, I think 18 months later, I quit, started my own business or my own businesses, because I'm running more than one business now through it. But I think that taught me you can make beautiful things that really help people flourish if you really tune into, your own art and your own skill set of what you can do, the difference you can make in different ways. So I think that's my story of where it's taken me from and where it's taken me today. And there's a lot of moments in there that I'm really blessed for, but I think that Richard Olivier one's probably the one that jumps out to me most. That it almost was like a flashback to the last 18, 20 years of life the minute I seen him doing that. It was incredible.
You've got to be open to those kind of moments, haven't you? The like meaningful coincidences that then impact your life in such a profound way.
Yeah. The first thing I wrote down that day, actually, when I was trying to say, right, I can't do Shakespeare because I don't know anything about Shakespeare. What do I know? How could I take things that are relatable to me and help it relate to others? So I started doing a lot of things on learning iconography, is taking things that people in organizations would know, and how do you then build a theme and a concept around that? So I was like thinking about my days in the travel industry and going, well, if you work in a travel agency, you're really interested in holidays, but you might not necessarily be interested in personal development, for example. So if you did a training program that was about, a holiday destination, you wrapped a theme around it, or you took the kind of craft and the skill of snowboarding and the different skill of the ski slopes, and then you said, well, what would that be like if you overlaid it with coaching, about the different complexities of coaching? And I started to build layers around it. I even wrote a training course called Amy's Winehouse, which was a chain of off sales that I came up with. It never really went anywhere, but it just made me chuckle that I wrote it on a piece of paper.
Superb. So Scott, I mean, if you were to explain to somebody, say the title of what you do and what you do, how would you explain it? That's a bit of insight that you've just given us.
Yeah, I always describe myself as a creator. That's how I say my job title. And I think I go with that title because the things that I'm involved in um, are different from one day to the next. So, maybe in one day, what I'm doing is I'm creating a learning experience for an organization. Maybe one day I'm coaching someone, and what I'm actually trying to do is to help them to create their own futures and help them to find the best version of themselves. I might be doing a bit of writing or something at one point and writing an article or ghostwriting for someone else to facilitate something else. So I'm always creating in the things that I do. And I'm also at my best state when I'm creating. I think that's when I'm truly abundantly at my best. It's when I'm in the space of creating new things and different things that people can use. So I tend to go with that as a title of what I do as a creator. It also doesn't have hierarchy attached to it as well, which is a very deliberate choice of mine. When people see my business and they ask what I do, that's how I describe it for that reason. I think it's more accessible for people to give that title, that people can always define what your job role or what you do in your job by the way in which you describe your title. So I went with creator because I thought that describes what I do pretty well.
Brilliant. Great explanation as well. Well, as you know, Scott, the podcast is around mindset and mindset development. So why is mindset so important to you, what you do?
So many reasons, honestly. Firstly, it's a fair question, and I've listened to loads of your previous interviews, and I thought some of the answers within them were so fascinating, unique about their own circumstances and their own roles and their own lives as well. So, I was thinking about this through the lens of, again, creator and what that means. I think from a career point of view, my mindset is important to me because it helps me to push myself harder. It helps me to push myself closer to the outer edges of what I think I can do. It helps me to scare myself a wee bit. I don't mind pushing myself into spaces I've never been in before. That I think my mindset helps me to do that. I also think I do that with a lot of heart and a lot of passion, and a lot of interest and curiosity in others. So I think my mindset, to some degrees, allows me to fall in love with a lot of things, whether that be people or whether that be places or whether that just be subject matter. When I get involved, I get involved. Right. I get right in there with the weeds because I like to know everything that's going on with it. And I think that compassion and interest also helps my mindset to be important because it helps me looking at optimism and hope is a big thing about how it helps me. And I think having an optimistic mindset about the world as a whole and about life also helps me from a mental health point of view, because it helps me look at things through a more positive intent, even when something happens that's dark or difficult or hard. I always see there's a possibility, there's an option of finding a way through it, and I think that keeps me healthy, and it keeps my mind healthy, and also I think keeps my body healthy. It's something I don't talk about that often, but I think it's important to mention it when we're talking about mindset. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I have been since I was 21. And I think having the mindset of healthy living and exercise and looking after self is really important for me to look after myself, and then my condition will help to look after me. So I think having that mindset of well-being, about mental and physical health being intertwined, I think helps me in my mindset of how I look at the world and that optimistic lens. And lastly, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah. It's a good laugh. Do you know what I mean? You can see the brightness and things. It's a funner space to live in. So yeah, that's why it's important to me, I think, Paul.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the couple of things that are picked out there is, to have the curiosity and fall in love with that curiosity and the optimism, the way that you look at things, and as well as you've looked after yourself as well type of mindset. You're bringing those together, and you can see how that makes it fun because it's the way that you look at life. Yeah. And is that so? I mean, in some respects, because normally I follow with the question, how would you describe your mindset? Is it it's a combination of mindsets that makes your mindset up?
I think it is. I think it's like a labyrinth, actually, Paul. To be honest, it's it's a bit interchangeable and woven. Do you know, two people described something to me in the last year that I'd never described myself as, but the minute they said it, I went, they're bang on. Somebody said my mind was a bit like popcorn. And he said, what it's like when you put corners of popcorn in a microwave and you turn it on, nothing happens at first, but the minute it starts getting excitable, you can see things firing all over the place.
Enough. Yeah.
And I thought, you know, that's a really good, that's how I would describe myself if I was just going to use one singular thing to describe it. And then somebody else said to me that I think you've got itchy creativity. And I also really liked that description because I think it's that kind of sparks that almost, to some degrees, it's like a firework of ideas and things that are sparking off when you're looking at different areas. But I think there's another side to that creativity that's about compassion. It's something I'm keen to lean into a lot as well. It's like, yeah, it's probably compassionate creativity to some degrees. I make sure that what I'm doing is inclusive for people. It's not just out there for the sake of being out there. It's not wacky. I don't describe my creativity as being wacky. I describe it as being purposeful and focused on solving real world problems rather than just being creative for the sake of being creative. I think it's got an intent with it. That I want to make sure I'm doing things that help others.
That makes complete sense. And you know, I think you'd be fine that some people actually really find it hard to step out of their comfort zone. And I'm guessing some of the stuff that you do through creativity helps them to do that.
Yeah, it does. You still have to give people the safety space to enable them to do that so that they don't feel silly or daft at any point when they're doing it, and give them some logic of why you're doing it. And it's quite difficult for people to be creative if they're not ripe, if they're not ready to be creative. So if you suddenly try to switch it on, like putting a light switch on, it doesn't always work for people. You have to almost give them a build up to what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and give them a little warm up to enable them to get in that space to do it. And I think that's important in noticing. There's a lot of people that say they aren't creative when they actually are in lots of ways. It's just they've got a very singular definition that's been given to them at one point in time, where they say, I can't draw, so I'm not creative. Well, you don't have to be able to draw to be creative. You know, there's lots of things you can be creative. You know, if you lie, you're creative. Do you know what I mean? If you tell jokes, you're creative. Do you know, if you read bedtime stories to your kids, you're creative. There are so many different concepts of what creativity is. If I sit and daydream about something, that in itself is creative. There's loads of different things that you might describe differently as being really creative, and I think that's one of the things when you're working with people is not to get too stuck in a singular definition. Is think about how are you creative? And I've been working on a really interesting project with a number of friends and fellow creatives at the moment of that very question: what makes us creative? And I think it's quite an interesting one to consider for us all, actually, in our jobs.
Yeah, no,
be creative.
Absolutely. I mean, I've found in the corporate world over the years when, you know, providing leadership developments and in conversations and coaching conversations, that so many people can quite quickly jump to that default position of I'm not creative, I'm not a creative type person. You know, so you know, I've experienced a lot of that, and you're quite right. It's helping to people to understand what creativity really is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is definitely. There's a lot of job roles as well out there, Paul, that people don't feel creativity is part of the task. Do you know? But the old adage about, you know, if you only use a hammer, you ain't going to get a different outcome if that's the only tool you have. So I think if we're going to solve again all the greater issues of today, it takes creativity and experimentation to try and solve some of the big problems in the world. So I think it's something we should all get a taste of and get a bit more involved in as well if we aren't already.
So you mentioned about, you know, talking about the compassion and the kindness in what you do, and we've obviously all experienced exponential change these last few years with the pandemic and lockdown. Has it grown out of that, or is it been something that's always been part of the work that you do?
I think it's always been part of what I do, but I've been able to use it to help me through the last couple of years. And actually, when I was in my own personal circumstances at the most difficult stages of the last 2 years, I think noticing I wasn't using my creativity was so obvious to me, but I wasn't even noticing it. It was like, do you know when we all get that marvelous announcement on March 20, stay in your house,
yeah,
don't go for a pint with your big brother.
yeah.
And you went, oh, shit, this changes everything. What am I going to do?
Oh, it changed everything.
I just
Yeah.
created a brand new tool, as you know, Paul, that there was a physical card system.
Yeah.
And I went, and Boris is standing saying, oh, don't touch cardboard surfaces, and clean your Amazon package when it comes to the door. Don't shake hands, don't be in the same office space as everyone. I've just created a tool that I'm encouraging people to be in the same space and share. And I go, oh my God, how do I do this? So I'm sitting going, oh no. And in the whole space when I'm doing it, I'm not going, what if? How might? What's the possibilities? I was so locked into this as a problem, and I'm just basically giving myself the worst medicine I could possibly give myself. But actually standing back from it at one point a few weeks later and going, okay, when am I at my best? As I said to you, I'm at my best when I'm creating. What can I create and how can I work in a way that helps me to navigate that? So I basically changed the rules of the game for myself in there, that I leaned into what I'd done previously in other circumstances and created different ways of working. So, from the idea of Kindfest, and we brought that to life, from taking the cognitized cards that I have and seeing how you could use them in a digital form, to building a couple of new businesses with my friend Kirsty Mack. We did a lot of different things. We ended up having Christmas parties that year, hosted on a new virtual platform that we had built. We created a virtual pub together. We did all these different things by just using creativity to try and solve a lot of really complex and difficult challenges. So I think, to answer your question, Paul, it was always there, but I think it really amplified it for me, because I was suddenly going, right, okay, the solution to this is me using my best quality to help others out and to help myself out to navigate this space.
Yeah.
Which, surprising to me, was that I didn't notice that straight away. It took me a good few weeks to suddenly give myself a nudge, and through the conversations with others as well, to say, Scott, when are you at your best? What is it you're doing? And me to go, missed that bit.
Yeah. Especially, but the thing with it all is you were going in one direction, and because I know I experienced it. I'd flown to Croatia to speak to Paris, and I was due to fly to Barcelona, and you think your life's moving in one direction, and all of a sudden it's moving in the other. And it's not until you finally sit down and go, right, what is it that I should do in this situation, and play to my strengths, that you realize that, there's lots of other things and lots of other ways of doing things. So, it's brilliant the way that you've explained that. And obviously that little bit of, you felt paralyzed just to start with, which I think most people did.
But we know this, Paul. We know this. We teach this every day. We should know this. Do you know what I think I did? I think the thing that flung me was pace. The pace flung me. The suddenness of, you were all doing things this way, now you're going to do things the opposite way. It's like taking an old 1930s telephone and replacing it with an iPhone, and saying, right, you were using this, but you've now got to use this. And actually making that shift really quickly and thinking that that's dead easy to do, because it isn't. Noticing that difference of space that you're working in. I think the trap I fell into was trying to fix everything too quick and trying to reconfigure my business over a week, rather than going, what's the hurry? I should just stop here and think a wee bit more and practice pausing. That I know Damien, you'd done a few episodes ago, talks about the quality of good pausing. But I think that's something that I didn't do at first. I went too fast into trying to find the solution. I think that's a big lesson in that for me.
Yeah, it was very, very similar for me. So I'd probably say the same thing, is that I felt that I had the choice of either doing something or doing nothing. And the doing nothing, in some respects, could have been just as valuable to have that time thinking than actually racing into trying to do things differently. Which obviously you're going to need to do things differently at some stage, but if you're going to do it well thought through. Do you know, from a mindset perspective then, because obviously there's curiosity, creativity, the compassion. Have you got any practical tips that you'd share that maybe you use or you've used in the past?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things is I always try to seek out new spaces and new adventures and not try to repeat things too often. I think I'm a massive music lover. I love music, and I love music that's got lots of range and styles to it. And I always really admire musical artists who change their style quite a lot, who shift their style a lot. So somebody like Damon Albarn, I'm a huge fan of, because he's went from being in a, pretty much a Britpop band to doing live theatre orchestra shows, to doing, crossover work with grime and rap artists, to, you know, doing his own solo stuff that's based on taking inspiration from the earth. And I think there's a lot of that in what I suggest people do when they're trying to be more creative, is try to look for new adventures and new spaces that you can exist in, and try not to repeat the same thing year after year and do the same thing. Keep pushing yourself to try new things that you haven't tried before. And I think if it starts to feel like a warm, cozy bath, get out it, because it'll only start keeping up on you. Because what will happen is the temperature will gradually get hotter and you won't notice it. And you'll get less interested in what you're doing and you won't notice it. So I kind of like to jump from a warm bath into a cold bath quite quickly from a metaphor point of view of work. And I do that by maybe trying to connect things that I've never connected before, or thinking of possibilities as a very deliberate state, doing quite deliberate daydreaming to work out where could you go to. And I think we're quite sometimes set in our ways at looking within our own industry for inspiration. I think we should do the opposite, actually. I think we should look out with our industry and look to completely different areas of business about where we could get ideas from, or maybe don't even look at business. Look at something else that's completely different to see where the patterns are that exist in that. They can teach you quite a lot about, how you can build that into business. And I said right at the very start of the first question you asked, Paul, about fun is really important for me within all of that. And I always try to remind people you were 9-year-old once, and there is still a possibility there's a 9-year-old kid hidden in you there somewhere. So just try and discover it now and then, because a 9-year-old kid doesn't stress themselves by all those different problems that go on in the world. They don't worry themselves by the fear of all that. They just go, if I want to do that, I'll
do that.
I'll do that, and I'll try that, and I'll do something different tomorrow, and I'll not worry about it. So I think kind of looking for that kid in yourself sometimes is a good way to do that. What would my young self tell myself to do in this situation, rather than always looking for the experienced head in the room? I think it can take you in different ways.
That's great advice. So with your mindset, has anybody helped you over the years to develop your mindset or enhance your mindset, or has there been a book or something that...
do you know, this is the question I really, when I was listening to your previous episodes, Paul, I was really searching in my head about who and what, and I kind of surprised myself, actually, I think, when I was thinking about this, because it wasn't naturally where I thought the answer would come from. But I've actually taken a lot of inspiration from bad practice, is looking at what I've been taught that I don't like and reversing it. Do you know, like the worst teachers you had in school?
Yeah, worst managers.
Are the worst managers, or the most bland death by PowerPoint training course you've ever been on, and going, that's not how I want to live my life, and that's not how I want to be doing things. I think a lot of my mindset is shaped through some quite bad experiences from that. I mean, I've blessed that I still got both my parents in my life, and I love them both dearly. I think I take the heart and the compassion part from my parents, but not necessarily the creativity elements. Although my dad is fairly creative. As I remember, a train set he made me when I was young was just amazing. It wasn't just a train set. This was like a landscape made out of paper mache. It was all hand painted. So I know I take some of that from watching and admiring what other people do. I said already, I think I take a lot of that from music and from lyrics and from song. That inspires a lot of creativity. Do you know, if I had to think of of anyone, just to kind of keep me on the right path, is somebody that you would know well as well, Paul, is Jill Taylor.
Okay, yeah.
That you work with, and then I worked with as well for a period at the co-op. And I think Jill had a really big impact on me because she was really great at backing myself, at telling me to back myself, and allowing me to flourish, allowing me to find roles when I was in an employed role, for me to do things and be at my best while I'm doing things, rather than forcing me into roles that felt restrictive. I think she was good at identifying that in me, and she gave me a lot of self-belief before I went self-employed. And I think when in the years I've been self-employed, along with the coaches that I've worked with, I think I've always looked for external forces to say how can that help and guide my story, and the music I listen to, and the people I really admire that are ridiculously creative in all that they do, and just really been inspired by the way in which they shape and evolve their own careers. So I think those are a combination of the experiences plus the conversations with those people, and actually looking in admiration at some of those people that do things in different ways, always really, really energize me to keep challenging myself to do things in different ways.
Brilliant. And, as you say, Jill has been an inspiration for you as well.
Oh, she's been great.
Absolutely.
She's been great. She really has. And I dare say you've sat a stone's throw from her at Anfield before as well, Paul. But, yeah, she just dead honest, but directly honest about where you're at, what you need to do, and giving you an opportunity to perform. And I'd never had that really in my career up until I worked with Jill. I was almost like doing the job that people wanted me to do, rather than her finding a space for me that I could be my best. And I always really, really appreciate Jill for that. And that she gave me an opportunity to shine in a space that it might have been diminished somewhat if she didn't do that.
One in a million.
Yes.
So Scott, just to conclude, with a couple of things. The first one is, I normally ask you, have you got any funny stories that you can share? That you know, there must have been, well, preferably, but I'll let you be the best judge of it.
I had two in my head. I might combine them if I can, but I'll start with the first one because I think is the one that probably resonates most. It was a time I tried to get Jose Mourinho the Scotland job for a training course. I always believe that if you're creative and you put creativity into your work, you can achieve what you want to achieve. I remember I was on a course in Sheffield with a fab company called Go Mad, Go Make a Difference, and they've got a really superb framework around how you can kind of strategize your creativity and how you can build a real map around it actually and plan this out. And they've got a questioning framework they use to navigate their strategic map, if you like. And the questioning framework is basically a series of different types of questions. So if you ask somebody a question like, how might you get home tonight? You'll probably give 10 answers to it. Where if you ask a question of how will you get home tonight, you'll give the one certain answer. So they show you the difference between a focused mind question and a possibility-based question.
Yeah.
So there was this little activity when I first started working with them, they gave us all as a group to do. And it was, you have got 5 minutes to come up with as many ideas as you can to solve a problem that you want to try to solve. Now, I think at the time, I was trying to remember who the Scotland manager was in this command. I might even have been Bertie Vogts or George Burley, but whatever it was, they were doing a pretty abysmal job, and I wanted him out of the Scotland job. And he did fall into the trap. He said, you can solve anything you want to solve. He said the word anything to me. Now, if somebody says anything to me, that means anything's possible. It doesn't mean say, do something that's in work context. So he said, you've got these questions in front of you on your sheet, and there was 10 questions. It was questions like, what possible resource could I use? Who could I possibly chat to? How could I possibly solve? This was the kind of questions you had there. Yeah. And they were drawn out in a kind of mind map shape. And what you had to do is put your answers around each of the questions. And you got 1 point for every answer that you provided. And so the idea is you set yourself a target of how many ideas you're going to come up with in 5 minutes. And he said this before we started. He went, the guy that was hosting it went, just to let you know, we have a bounty on this, that if you get above 80 ideas in 5 minutes, we've got a £10,000 bounty that the guy that created this system is volunteering to offer. And I wasn't there I was there to learn the system, to teach that system to other people. So I didn't know whether I was being counted into the bounty as I could win it, or whether I wasn't in the bounty to win it, because I was there just as a trainer to learn how to use it so I could use it elsewhere for a company I was working for. So I thought, no, I'm going to play along anyway. I'm going to try and do this. So I sat for 5 minutes to see how many ideas I come up with. They didn't ask at the start what your goal was. You just wrote it down in the top corner. So when it got to the answers and people are reading them out, he's asking the question, the host, and he's saying, right, what was your target and what was your actual? And the scores are coming. My target was 25 and I got 20. My target was 30 and I got 28. My target was 18 and I got 16. And I'm feeling really, really bad that he's about to come to me. And he goes, Scott, what was your target? My target was 70 and I got 95.
Oh, wow.
And he went, what? He goes, you get 95? I went, yeah, I get 95. He goes, if you don't mind me asking you, what were you trying to solve? I said, I'm trying to get Jose Mourinho the Scotland job. he burst out laughing. He went, well, you must be pretty desperate if you're coming up in 95 different ways. I says, honestly, one of this, I'm going to walk to his house and kidnap him and take him all the way to Hampden Park. I says, my ideas are going in all sorts of directions here. But it did teach me something quite valuable, actually, about possibilities, that you can come up with ideas within there. And there was things on that list that obviously I can really at that point in time go and chat to Jose Mourinho and Chappie's door and ask him to come to Scotland or pay him the money. But there was stuff in there that was definitely different than possible. What you would get if you weren't asking yourself those questions in a different way. And I'm pretty certain I'm probably the only person that's come up with 95 different ways of how you could get Jose Mourinho the Scotland job. The irony of that is he'd probably get it in the next couple of years by how he's doing at Roma at the moment. So
that's it. I was going to say, would you still want him? Brilliant. That's a great story. So just to conclude then, Scott, what would be the last piece of advice that you give to the listeners?
Do you know, my last piece of advice would probably be a quote from Edward de Bono, because I think it defines creativity really, really well, actually, in a mindset perception as well. And I think it's always think sideways. For me, that's how you solve some of the biggest problems of the world.
Brilliant. Great piece of advice. Well, Scott, it's been great having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Great listening to some of your ideas and talking about creativity. So thanks for coming on.
That's a pleasure. Listen, I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for all those questions. You've given me some thoughts to take away as well, Paul, to go and say, I've not planned to do that this year. I need to now work out how I'm going to do that. So I'll maybe phone Jose and see if he's taking it.